Hi, the topic for this video is self-esteem. So a healthy sense of self or self-esteem is the ability for me to hold myself in warm, positive regard in spite of my limitations and flaws and know that I matter and I am enough. Oftentimes, due to society, culture, our family of origin, the area that we happen to live in, lots of outside factors, we are taught that our sense of self-worth or our value is tied directly to things that are outside of ourselves. So this can become problematic because those things that are outside of ourselves are not very stable, right? So the three different areas that most people tie their sense of worth to or get their value from are called outside esteem. These three areas are performative, attribute, and relationships. So looking at yourself and knowing like what gives you value, what makes you feel good about yourself or that you're worthy or maybe even better than others, and whether it's tied to performance, right? So if I do a really good job, if I win the game, if I get the raise, if I get more education, right? I go from the associates to the bachelor's to the master's to go for the doctorate, right? Like if I get my sense of self-worth based off of how I perform, that's pretty shaky. Those things could be taken away from us, or we don't get them. So if I apply for the job and I don't get it, if I notice that I feel worthless and I'm not good enough, that's an indicator that my self-esteem is tied to something outside of myself. It's based off of how I perform, which is really problematic. The other area is attribute. So attributes are things that are outside of ourselves. Oftentimes they're tangible items such as what kind of car I drive, what kind of house I live in, how big my house is, or how small it is, what part of town do I live in, what sort of clothes do I wear, and anything that you can physically touch are oftentimes attributes. Again, problematic because if I have the nice house, what happens if it burns down, right? And then I have to live in maybe a tiny one-bedroom apartment, and now I feel less than or worthless, or based off of the kind of car that I drive. So if I have the nice fancy car that was super expensive and goes 0 to whatever in whatever seconds, I feel like I'm cool or I'm worthy clearly because I can afford such a car. But what happens if I crash that car and now I'm driving a rental that squeals every time I turn the corner or backfires? And my sense of self-worth is tied to what other people are thinking about me based off of what I'm driving. Again, another shaky part of basing your self-esteem off of things that are outside of you. The third area is relationships. I think most of us can think about a time when we were with someone and they made us feel great, right? They're like, oh, you're beautiful, you're so funny, I really enjoy being with you, and we feel loved and valued and worthy. And then they break up with us, and all of a sudden you feel your sense of worth just plummet and you're no good anymore. Nobody's gonna love me. I'm all alone, and those sort of things that we talk to ourselves is an indicator that we've tied our sense of worth to something that's outside of us. So the work that I have clients do is first, like, notice, where do you get your value from? What were you taught growing up? How did you get your sense of being valued and loved? What did you have to do to get that in your family? Also, what did your family value, right? If you've got a parent who is constantly like, you got to work hard, and they're spending 80 hours a week at work and you hardly ever see them, we make the connection that you need to, well, basically live at work, right? If we've got the parent who is constantly making comments about what other people have and don't have and making judgments about them, we tend to internalize that and, believe that someone's sense of self-worth is based off of what they have to show for themselves. Or relationships, if we've got a parent who, basically live vicarious through our achievements or what we were doing, right? we get the idea that it's important that relationships are what make us who we are. So identifying what was modeled for you growing up as a kid, noticing what makes your value or worth go up or down in those areas. And then the work is getting to the middle. So noticing when you feel less than, or maybe even times where you feel better than others. As humans, we generally will bounce back between the extremes, right? Sometimes we feel less than and we're not good enough. Other times we're sitting in judgment of someone else. So the practice is noticing yourself, notice others. Great place to do this is go to the store, right? Notice what you're thinking about when you're looking at other people. What sort of judgments are you making? What sort of comparisons are you making between yourself and another person? So when we're feeling less than, often it's because we're comparing ourselves. So we're looking at this other person and thinking, I'm not good enough. They're so much smarter than me. They're better than me. I can never do that sort of thing, right? And notice that, oh, I'm comparing myself. I feel less than them. And the work is getting to the middle, is holding yourself in warm, positive regard, repeating that to yourself. I'm going to hold myself in warm, positive regard in spite of my limitations and flaws. I matter and I'm enough. And it's getting to that same as. Just because someone's been doing the same job that you're doing and they've been doing it for 20 years and they know so much, that doesn't make them better than you. It just means they've had more experience. You'll get there. So recognizing you're same as. Right? The other flip side is noticing when you're in judgment of others, when you're feeling better than them, right? So if I'm, been working at my job for 20 years and I see some new kid come in and I can maybe be like, they don't know what they're doing. I'm way better than them. I've been doing this forever, and I might talk down to them, or even just in my head think like they're not as good as me. I'm in judgment. They are not less than me. I am not better than them. I have gifts. I also have flaws, and that doesn't make me better than anyone else. So breathing down, deflating yourself to same as. I'm going to hold myself in warm, positive regard in spite of my limitations and flaws, and know that I matter and that I'm enough. And we are same as. We just have different gifts. And we all have flaws and things that we can improve on. So that is the work of building a healthy sense of self-esteem, is breathe up, breathe down, and then keep noticing. Thanks.